Welcome to episode 12 of the Loane Hockey Podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about a really fascinating defenseman who's just coming off a Norris Trophy win for the best defenseman in the league in the 2023-24 season. That is Quinn Hughes of the Vancouver Canucks. Now, Quinn Hughes, when we talk about Quinn Hughes is a true number one defenseman. He can play big minutes, he can play all situations, he can play power play, penalty kill, he can play even strength, he can play O zone, neutral zone. He can play D zone situations. He can play a lot of variety in his game. And when we're talking about his game and his structure, sometimes the misjudgment when it comes to offensive defensemen Hughes is obviously the prototypical offensive defenseman, is that they're not good defensively, which is a complete and total lie because when you look at the makeup of Hughes's game, and at the same time, he's not one of the most elite when it comes to defending entries and stuff like that, which can sometimes be normal for defensemen in general. But he's really elite when it comes to defending D zone situations, and he's elite at even strength defensively as well. His defensive value is so high, and by far, it's what makes him a true number one defenseman. And there's so much makeup of his skating and how he's able to close gaps, how he's able to angle, how he's able to serve, how he's able to cut ice in half. There's a lot of modern day prototypical elements with his defensive habits and his defensive details that we see regularly from Hughes already. But that also makes him fascinating because you're adding layers into what is already a fascinating player. And with Quinn Hughes, he's such a good player all around. And we mentioned that. And we mentioned the skating elements as well. And a big thing with Hughes, it's very noticeable right away when you watch his game, is the cutback power. And the cutback power and the ability to cut back is so nuanced when it comes to modern day power skating, within defensemen especially, because being able to cut back and being able to cut back in a way that allows that player to go into that next space with speed is so crucial to be able to extend possession a little bit easier for those players and try to manipulate the game in their favor as well. And cutbacks are a big part of that because there's ways to generate speed through turns, speed off the outside edge, speed through crossovers. There's different ways you can utilize speed within the skating elements to be able to transform the not only the cutbacks, but being able to gain speed off turns in general as well. And he's a very modern day power skater when we're talking about how he uses power turns to be able to gain separation space. He's so good at it, and he's gotten so much better at it in his time in the NHL. And obviously, he's been an elite skater for so long and for so many years. At the same time, you see that ability and that prowess to be able to actually cut back and how well he's able to power through turns and then be able to gain speed as he's going through the turn to be able to get to the next space in order for him to manipulate the ice in his favor and be able to create space for himself. And he's a big threat when it comes to space and utilizing space. And it doesn't matter if he's in small area space, if he's in a lot of space, and it doesn't matter the situation because Hughes has the ability to understand space really well. His spatial awareness is top notch when it comes to defensemen. And the other benefit to this is given that he's already really quality defenseman defensively, it adds to the offensive layers of his game because he understands the little nuances and details that go into defensive habits. And sometimes those habits are able to translate into the offensive style of play, depending on the situation, depending on the habits in general. So with Hughes, he really asserts himself really well utilizing that lateral agility. You see a lot of ozone elements where he's able to walk the line. He walks the line with really pure power. And he's so good at being able to use the lateral agility, some mohawks for flair deception within his skating and within his feet, and to be able to open shot lanes, open pass lanes, be able to manipulate the situation, the ozone situation in his favor. He's become, and when we talk about aggressive defensemen, you don't necessarily look at him as an aggressive type of defenseman, but you see the mentality. His mentality is aggressive as a puck rusher because he's not afraid to aggressively push pace up ice. He's gotten so much better at that, especially in neutral zone sequences. He's become more assertive with puck rushing, which has helped him drive pace, neutral zone play, and being able to create an evolving style defensive game and a breakout machine as well. So that puck rushing ability, that ability to be an automatic breakout and then translate that to the entries, because he's also really good at being able to translate controlled exits to entries. One of the best defensemen in the league at doing that as well. And he's one of the best defensemen in the league in a lot of different areas. but that's just one particular area, how he's able to link together the controlled exits to the entries. Some defenders, some players have a tougher time doing that. Usually defenders are better at linking controlled exits to entries compared to forwards. But with him, he does it so regularly, and he's so good at being able to utilize those different nuanced elements within his breakout patterning, and linking that to rush situations, and then linking that to entry play as well. So he's really dynamic when it comes to being able to be a breakout machine. And I mentioned that he's a really automatic breakout. He's a one-man breakout. He can be an automatic breakout. He can break pucks out individually. He can find space and lead guys into space really well on his outlets, keep pucks flat on the ice, and keep pucks crisp and passes very crisp as well. But he, most of the time, he likes to lead the breakout, and he's not afraid to do that. He's really good at being that F1. He can do it with a little sidestep or a cutback or a little spin or something along those lines. And he's really good at beating the initial wave of forecheck pressure, and he adapts really well to it with his feet and with his decision making and anticipation under pressure. He has the ability to shoulder check frequently, so he's always shoulder checking and always pre-scanning to make sure he understands the surrounding area of the ice that he's in, and he's really effective all around when it comes to that. And his decision making in small areas is so elite, and it's so different because his ability to create separation space and be able to create space individually is especially unique for a defenseman, because there's a lot of skating elements that go into that. There's a lot of puck handling elements that go into that, but just the puck positioning and an ability to put the pucks into space in small areas for himself to be able to gain speed going into the next scenario. It's much harder to do when you're talking about a defenseman in a smaller area. Granted, he's a smaller defenseman, so he has a little bit more agility and he has smaller limbs within his lower body already. So he's able to move naturally and naturally more freely. So with Hughes, he's so good with how he can link together those escapability elements and the ability to power pivot. So power pivots, they're essentially just power turns. Power pivots are being able to generate power with the pivot and being able to generate power in terms of how fast the pivots are, how efficient they are, and how they can lead players to be able to create space for themselves within the next sequence, because it's not always about creating space in the short term, it's also about creating space in the long term for these players as well. They have to find ways, especially elite players who have anticipation and ability to understand that next sequence. They have to understand what goes into the next sequence to be able to put themselves in better ice and better spots heading into the future in terms of those sequences as well. And he's obviously the PP1 quarterback, and he's such an elite driver of play when it comes to power play usage and being able to be a power play threat consistently, walking the line, using lateral agility, using mohawks, being able to find passing lanes. He keeps his head up all the time for a heads up awareness. He's never looking down at the puck. You always see him looking up, scanning, processing, trying to find a lane. If he doesn't find a lane, he's not afraid to circle around. He's not afraid to defer off to a teammate. He'll do something along those lines. At the same time, he's not afraid to lead the play individually. So there's the best of both worlds when you're talking about a guy who can defer really well and also individually drive play really well, especially on the power play, to be able to take advantage of those power play settings as well. And Vancouver's power play is so much better with them than without them, and they're so elite when it comes to generating so many forms of offense with him on the power play, and he can find lanes from the point that others can't, other defensemen can't, and he's so unique and so rare when it comes to being able to find those little seams, find those little lanes, find those cross ice passes, cross ice seams, whatever it may be. He's really good and really adept at being able to find those situations as well, and he's he's so good at finding another gear when it comes to his own game. And this is something he's really evolved at in recent years as well. It's his ability to shift gears and ability to shift the pace of game of the play. And part of that has to do with his power skating elements. He's gotten much faster and much more efficient when it comes to power skating compared to his time coming out of the University of Michigan to where he is with the Canucks right now after being drafted by the Canucks in 2018. And you look at his game and how effective he is at being able to drive play. Some of that has to do with the adaptation that he's adapted to in the NHL over time. He's going to make faster decisions. He's going to make smarter decisions. He's going to be more efficient with the puck, more efficient with his skating. He's going to understand how to round himself out in many different ways and better compared to the University of Michigan, where you're only playing against players who are, say, 24, 25 maxed out. In the NHL, you're obviously playing against men who are around sometimes upwards of 40 years old, if not older. So with Hughes, he's become part of the thing is he's being able to process the game faster. He has to. He doesn't have a choice because of the NHL and the fast-paced style of play and the evolving aspects of the game. But at the same time, adapted so seamlessly because of his hockey sense, his innate decision making, anticipation, ability to read the rush, ability to read rushes against, line rush for. There's a lot of different situations that have gone into Hughes' way of thinking and how dynamic he's become at being able to find another gear and find another pace element to his game. So when you look at his pace now and how he's able to drive pace, there's much faster elements into how he's able to generate pace and within his feet as well. And again, I mentioned this briefly before, but how well Hughes is able to link his exits to his entries. He's elite when it comes to controlled exits, and this can be on passes or carries individually. Same thing with entries. He's really elite and one of the top percentiles in defensemen among the league. When I checked his numbers analytically in different sites, he's so elite at being able to drive the bus in neutral zone situations and on breakouts, leading those to eventual rushes, and then obviously the entry play as well, and being able to create controlled entries. And controlled entries are so important to the defenseman's way of thinking nowadays because the you could argue that defensemen are sort of an F4 and sort of that extra forward nowadays with how much they've evolved and how much the position has evolved. So Quinn Hughes is he's essentially a forward in a sense with how he's able to drive play and drive the play offensively and drive play through transition as well. So the exits to the entries and the linking those together are obviously very important for him. And the last thing is he's really elite when it comes to D zone retrievals. And we mentioned this briefly before, but his ability to shake guys loose and his ability to understand how to create successful D zone retrievals and beat guys, it could be in a variety of uncomfortable situations where it could be a puck being rimmed around, it could be a puck that bounces off the end wall, it could be a puck that bounces off the net, it could be something along those lines, something different. But the thing with Hughes that makes him so easily adaptable to those situations is because he has the feet, he has the puck skills, and he has the hockey sense. Those three main elements are allowing him to consistently be successful when it comes to D zone retrievals. And understanding how to manage the puck in those scenarios is so important as a defenseman, and being able to understand how to create that next play out of those situations is crucial for a defenseman to be able to maintain that degree of consistency within their game and being able to link to the next play. So if a defenseman can't get out of their own zone via that D zone retrieval and unsuccessful D zone retrieval, then it becomes troublesome. Versus the opposite, where it becomes essentially very crucial to generating a chance off the rush, a scoring chance off the rush. So a lot of different elements come into play when talking about Quinn Hughes, and he's elite defender in the NHL, elite two-way defenseman for sure.